Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Build with Stakki, where we speak to sales, go-to-marketing, revenue leaders about sort of the state of the sales tech market at the moment, how they are sort of thinking about their own sales stacks, as well as when we talk to partners, how they sort of work with their customers. This week, we've got Peter Mollins, VP of Marketing from Nooks, on the show, and really looking forward to diving into sort of AI, the importance of keeping things human as well. No topics that are close to Peter. Peter, great to have you on. Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, absolutely, James. Great to be here as well.
Excellent. So I know we sort of spoke a little bit over the last couple of weeks and sort of AI and the importance of keeping humanity at the front of sales is a big thing. I know a lot of our viewers will be very familiar with Nooks as well. You guys have sort of blown up over the last few years, and everyone that we speak to, if they have questions about dialers, they often ask us about Nooks. So great to have you on. Before we dive into those areas, tell us a little bit about sort of your background, what brought you sort of to work with the Nooks team.
Sure, yeah. I'm the VP marketing here with a real focus on community, and I think that's really important, that community focus, because so much of Nooks's growth has been our complete obsession with making sure that customers are getting immense value from the product. And so what we see is if you have customers that are raving fans because they're getting promoted, because they're making more money, because they're more successful, that's the best marketing that you can possibly do. And so we just want to keep investing there and making sure that our customers are ecstatic and are happy to tell their peers about it. Yeah, and as far as like my background, it's always been in B2B SaaS, but it's principally been within sort of the sales tech space with companies like Knowledge Tree, Savo, both which were rolled up into Seismic, and then also with a company called SetSale, which was rolled up into ZoomInfo. So sales tech has always been near and dear to my heart. Managed SDR teams and outbound teams, really since back in 2010. So yeah, very excited to talk about this topic.
Yeah, excellent. And that's a lot of, you mentioned community, and you mentioned helping sales reps or the users of Nooks get more promotions, make more money, look good, and accelerate excel in their careers and their roles. How do you do that? What's the main? That's great to hear that that's the main focus of your guys' remit, I suppose, and MO. What's the main way you do that?
Well, it's really a holistic approach. And I think that what that means is starting, if you think of it in terms of like the life cycle of any customer, there's a point in time where they've never heard of Nooks before. And they're just struggling with their day-to-day job. And maybe it's because they're a individual seller and they're not able to generate enough pipeline. Maybe it's a manager who's struggling to coach their team because they don't have enough time to go through all their calls and all their transcripts and the like in order to coach. So back at that stage, it's important that we're providing value. Maybe that's benchmark data. Maybe that's best practice information. Maybe that's what other customers are doing. So even before they've even heard of us, we want to be putting out into the ether valuable content, valuable information that's useful. In the sales process, we do trials often, and we want to make sure that our sellers are users of the product. They know what they're doing, and when a customer is trialing it, that they're actually getting results right then, like they're actually building pipeline themselves at the time during the trial. And then post purchase, we just have an incredible customer success team, and it's just maniacally focused on making sure that customers are successful. So I think really like that to me that says you have to think about putting out into the ether as much as possible value, and then throughout the entire process value all the time. So yeah, that's how we do it.
Nice. And I can speak firsthand from when I was at my previous company. We partnered with Nooks and we trialed our SDRs on it. And I think we had 12 to 15 SDRs all on the trial. and the majority of them loved it.
Oh, great.
They all wanted to use it. The virtual sales floor added so much value to them that people were hounding me day and day. I said, not my decision.
It's so true. It's like, like I say, because what ultimately what Nooks is doing is it's automating busy work that's associated with outbounding, so that you can focus on the human side of selling, and you want to make sure that that experience comes through in the trial, so people are using it, and then they're able to have more live conversations on the phone with their prospects. They're able to have better quality conversations, and then those ultimately turn into meetings. And I think that's where you want to be. You want to be at the end of a trial where it's not, well, I guess we saved an hour or something, or geez, there was a little bit of productivity improvement. You want it to be, oh, wow, I doubled pipeline. I tripled the number of conversations I had. You want to have these measurable outcomes that are, clear and clear value. Not only because it makes people excited, like people have the pitchforks out insisting that they purchase the product, but also just makes it an easier conversation with finance or others.
Yeah. And that is often the thing as well, where I see like a lot of companies fall down when they purchase sales tech or when they bring sales tech in. It might be a RevOps person or a manager or a leader who's brought it in, they've tested it, they've had one or two people do some stuff with it. And I think that's now where it's also quite hard for people to get new tech in, is because leadership and boards and stuff are slightly sick of one of the leaders putting their neck on the line for a tool, and then it doesn't necessarily build the pipeline. But the way your trials are set up means that that user adoption, which often causes the tools to fall down, is, the users are in the trial and they're using it quite heavily. And because it's, like you say, it's automating the busy work, they end up with that. And this literally happened to me. I had people in the team with it, like their pitchforks out being like, we want this, are we getting this, are we getting this, are we getting this?
Right.
We tried to make it work, and we ended up doing something else, but I now know that company have gone back since I've left. So it's genuinely like a great tool, because it helps that human element of sales come to the forefront as well.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. I think that too often companies in a trial for any tech, whether it's sales tech or any others, will treat the trial as training or onboarding, like pre-onboarding. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is to prove value so that you can make the case and get the deal done. I mean, that's the real purpose of it. And sometimes that requires, as you said, like making sure that people are going to adopt it, because everyone's concerned about shelfware. But I think the best thing that you can do is to have measurable outcomes at the beginning that are understood to be linked directly to, time savings, more revenue, risk reduction, whatever it is that's important for your business, for whatever is coming, you're trying to get into your stack. But make those extremely clear and extremely, as best you can, dollar centered, and then have the trial linked exclusively to that. Because ultimately, like if you're just doing, okay, well, this is the next step, you would click here and you would click there. If that doesn't have the outcome of building a business case, it's not going to get across the line. I mean, we're winning, 8 out of 10, even more trials, and it's because of the focus on, let's give real value.
Yeah, and you get users in there and enjoying it, and then it starts to become a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Going back to one of the things you said as well, is like there's a real focus for you guys on automating the busy work, and then I think this is where people would still sort of have a narrow mind of power dialers. It's not just a power or a parallel dialer. You've got the virtual sales room, and then the impact of that on the extra coaching, real-time coaching for reps who you're not in the same room with, all that type of stuff. Conversational AI and stuff like that makes reps better. You're automating busy work and you're increasing opportunities of coaching, whilst also increasing opportunities at bat.
Right.
Tell me, sort of, what do your customers come to you about, where they are using AI? What do you regularly see with customers where they're trying to automate things and it's not really having that desired effect? I'm sure that must happen all the time.
Yeah. I think like with AI, like what you really want to be doing is, as you said, automating what you can so that the humanity comes out. Because ultimately, if I buy software all the time, of course, in my role. And one of my major concerns whenever I'm buying something is, will I have a partner? Will I have someone when invariably something goes wrong after it's purchased or there's some kind of hiccup? And I want to make sure that I have a relationship with that company so that we can fix it. We can get those problems addressed. And if I don't have that human relationship, it's really tough for me to feel comfortable going forward. So the more that you can allow the rep to empathize, to make that personal connection with the buyer, the better off you're going to be. It's often a real slog to get things approved internally, and so if you don't have that personal relationship, it's tough. So when I talk about like what is that that you're automating, like, think about a seller's typical day. I mean, they're starting with, they're researching accounts, they're trying to figure out which accounts they should be going after, they're trying to understand, are there pain points within that customer that I can identify, that maybe I want to focus my messaging on. Then actually trying to get a hold of them, so how do I find out what their number is, and how do I give them a call, and they didn't pick up the phone, and there's always these challenges that just eat up your day. And especially if you're doing that over and over again, you're targeting, I don't know, 50, let's say you're targeting 30, 40 accounts in a day. You're trying to do research and make it quality. And you're trying to get these people on the line. That's all those elements chew up your day. So if you can automate that, if you can get real research that's based on signals that are available over the internet or on LinkedIn, or even more interestingly, from previous conversations that you may have had with other people in the company, putting that together allows me then to have a real pitch, not just, "Hey James, I saw you're in England. Go football team." Like that's not going to get us over the line. But if I spoke to someone on your team before and I found out that you had a serious pain over compliance or whatever, then going to you with that story is just going to be so much more effective.
Again, that's where I think, well, I'd see a lot of the sort of breaks in focus and distraction impact reps. Oh, I think I might have spoken to someone at this company 12 months ago. Let me dig around and find that so that then I can call these two new people. But a lot of times we can just automate, and in that case, maybe you don't even need to automate. You just need to have your CRM set up correctly so that as you look at an account, you can see all the previous stuff and it's flagged. That's what builds pipeline, that easy referenceability, clarity on sort of previous context, additional current context, and the ability to make more calls and focus. And then really good coaching on top of that. And I think that's where you guys are really excelling.
Well, you're right about the coaching as well. Like it's not just a seller themselves; it's a manager where AI can help. I mean, I've coached a lot of SDRs, and I've researched a lot of phone conversations and the like to try to understand where to coach. And I think that's part of the problem, is like knowing where to focus. If I've got an SDR team of, let's say, 6 people, and they're making 50 dials a day, and that's not even all that much, already you've got maybe 30, 40 calls per day at least, or 40 conversations a day that I'm trying to filter through. And now I've got to go through those, and I'm supposed to listen to all of them in order to find a coachable moment. That's where AI can help. Is it can identify areas that are important for me to focus on, and then I can dive in and then provide that human-led coaching on the other side based on scoring of conversations. So it really is a scaling opportunity, helping me as a leader to scale up the coaching side, and really focus on problem areas or areas that I want to leverage across the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is probably where you see a lot of customers that you talk to and stuff. They're looking for not just more conversations, but they're looking at how can we better utilize leadership and management time to support these reps. And that's where what we do at Stakki, we're looking at how can we help people consolidate their sales stack, have more of it in one place, so that we can increase those things. And that's where Nooks is really sort of stepping up.
Right. Well, yeah, that is interesting. And I think one of the challenges is putting that all together. Like, I think that you want to make sure that whatever your stack looks like, that it's connected together, or if you're using, you're focusing on one technology in particular, that it's something that people enjoy working in. um, I think that, like, that's always the experience of the user that gets overlooked. Because if someone doesn't enjoy being in the tool, or the set of tools that are connected together in the stack, usage goes down, or usage is, shortcuts happen, and just effectiveness goes out the window. So user experience, I think, is a key thing across the stack.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of loops back to one of your earlier points. As a buyer of technology yourself, you want to know you have a partner there that if things go wrong, I've got someone that I can rely on, someone that can come in and support. And one of the things that could go wrong is team kind of become disillusioned with the tool, or the integrations and stuff aren't working properly. So it starts to drop. Who can you rely on to come and support that and fix that and get the team excited again, so that you start to see the impact of it. And I think more and more, where I say often, there's not a lot of bad tools now, or maybe there are a lot of bad tools, but there's enough good tools now where sometimes it just comes down to who do you get a better feel from, whose CS team do you believe and trust and feel like you can rely on.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think that's why, like, the emphasis on humanity matters so much, because you develop that relationship. And we've all received, clearly AI generated emails that don't inspire a lot of confidence. I mean, you want, we've seen, like, from our analysis, that the more that you can combine the two together, the better. You had made the point of, like, in the CRM records, there's all sorts of great data there. Like, I don't want my colleagues in the SDR team to just, like, blindly read through a transcript based on, like, a distillation of CRM data. I want that to be informing their conversation, and helping them to be distinct. Yeah, no, I think you're quite right.
Yeah. Let's talk about then the typical customers that you often work with, and maybe the typical stacks you're seeing, because I think there are still a lot of customers who, well, it's a classic pain that comes up all the time. I'm sure for you, as it does for us, is we're not having enough conversations. We're not connecting enough. So we're kind of considering a parallel dialer or a power dialer, but we're not sure if it might be data. So let's move into sort of that build with Stakki. If I pull up the Stakki screen, what's kind of maybe the typical sales stack of customers that you work with, and the ones that I guess have success with a tool like Nooks. I imagine they're often sort of Salesforce and HubSpot users.
That's right. Yeah, Salesforce, HubSpot, very common. So we see that quite a bit. From a research perspective, lots of different data tools that people are using. They'll have ZoomInfo, Apollo, and others. So definitely lots of options there. Also using our own Nooks numbers to help with the enrichment. From an enablement perspective, certainly, like, Nooks for coaching and training is critical. And
when you say the coaching and training from Nooks, do you just want to elaborate on sort of how we do that? Because I know you've got the virtual sales floor, which most people will be fairly familiar with, but maybe not used one, not entirely sure what that is. And obviously, I think you've also got some conversational AI capability as well now.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, what one of the elements of Nooks is allowing people, as a team, to make calls on essentially a virtual sales floor. So they can, let's say, 10 people on a virtual sales floor. They can be connecting and chatting with each other, giving each other hints and advice and encouragement. And then as people land calls, they can pop in and listen to those calls, maybe offer some additional advice or learn from their peers about what's working. And maybe the call didn't go well, and they come back to the virtual sales floor and they can get some encouragement and keep that momentum going. But it's also about scoring calls. So using AI to automate, identifying which calls are the most effective and which aren't, and helping then the managers to coach better. And then even using AI bots that can be trained based on previous conversations so that they're reflecting um, accurate objections and concerns and business challenges that the prospect has. So then you can practice on those either at the beginning of the day or throughout the day, and can really hone your skills and on the phone.
Yeah, and that's that conversational AI piece, right? Where people might be familiar with tools like Second Body, but you've now got that same sort of ability. So whilst I'm not only getting more live feedback after calls, my manager can be on the virtual sales floor with me. They can listen to both sides of the call. Can also pull me aside quickly, have a conversation, give me some feedback, and I can jump in with everyone else. It's also tracking all of those calls and pulling it and scoring it and training it against an AI. So that next morning, taking the feedback, I can do 10, 20, however many minutes of training with that AI that I want right before I could jump back into sort of the game, as it were.
That's
And
that's right. Yeah.
that's what really, I think I've seen accelerate people's RAM times several times over.
It's so true. Yeah. The more at bats you can get. And I think that's another reason why like automating dialing matters so much, because the more that you can automate that, I don't really care for if my SDR colleagues are great at punching in numbers. I want them to be great at having good conversations on the phone with prospects. And so the more at bats you have, the quicker that their ramp is, as you say.
Yeah, exactly. Going back to this then, with one thing I notice, and I will see with people who are thinking about, our connect rates are down, so maybe we should try a power dialer, we should try a parallel dialer.
Mhm.
Is it's a good tool and it can be effective if used in the right way, but you need the right data to
Mhm.
support it, and you
Mhm.
need to have that in order. Otherwise, you might be burning contacts. You might be just
Mhm.
making more of a mess with the data in the CRM. You might be just putting adding more mess,
Mhm.
and it's just not going to give you that compound effect you're going for. So, what would you advise, or what sort of typical things when customers come to you would you maybe advise around the data before, if this is the case, before you recommend actually
Yeah.
now is a good time to use Nooks?
Yeah, I think data, you're right. Data is super important. Sometimes like you don't actually know that the data is bad until as you're actually using it. And so
Yep.
that's where we think it's important that like if let's say you're dialing out, you're trying to get a hold of your prospects and there's a wrong number or it's the wrong person at that number or something similar, that's always going to happen. No data
Mm-hmm.
provider is 100%.
Yep.
And so you just have to be effective, and that's one of the things that Nooks does well is being able to then go out and enrich that data and get the correct number.
Yep.
Also, like
Exactly.
in the CRM, like more broadly on data, we're talking phone numbers and the like, but there's also lots of other data that's critical. So as I say, love using HubSpot, and I think one of the things about it that's so valuable is when you're storing good information about previous conversations that you've had. So, for instance, you might have insights into a conversation I had with a junior person or someone in a parallel department or something similar, and they've given me insight that helps me to move forward. Maybe it's information about a deal that was lost, and I've marked that in the CRM. So there's a whole collection of that kind of information that is either within Nooks or within the CRM like HubSpot, and that's just super valuable for me to again personalize the conversation that I'm having.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's often one of the things that I think we've alluded to it already in this conversation, is that often there's so much data in the CRM that just isn't being utilized properly, which we can tighten up. Maybe it's the CRM, like the way it's structured, so the view that the team are actually using as they work through their lists, or maybe it's just conversations, and whether it be transcription, whether it be actually humans putting the notes in after calls, isn't being put in the right place. A few tweaks and adjustments can suddenly create a CRM that people thought didn't have a lot of value in it, can actually surface all that value, and then you can start start calling for it fairly quickly and start to see more results. I know one of our customers sort of, I said that simple exercise, doubled their average deal size because they had all the data in there. They were just focusing on anywhere they wanted rather than looking at all the data they had. And what you're doing here by showing us, with this build is actually you don't need loads of tools. You need a couple of good couple of good data enrichment options, a solid CRM if it's got all of the right setup that we've just gone through, and then a tool like Nooks has loads of really really good power to help build lots of pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's totally fair.
This is quite like a typical stack. I love it because it's really lean. I imagine there are some other tools though that maybe your typical customers might use or you yourselves use. Are there any others worth mentioning, whether it be first party intent, multi-channel platforms, automation?
Yeah, I think intent is always important. I think we do a lot of that analysis through our prospecting technology, and I think it's really important that people do look at prospecting as a not only a time saver but also an effectiveness tool. So what I mean by that is you want to do research so that you have a conversation that matters. So if they miss their quarter, if they are now actively researching, maybe tax information or who knows whatever it is that those signals are that are relevant to you and indicate that your buyer is in market, you should definitely be looking at some kind of prospecting solution. And so not only time savings, because good research does take a lot of time. So automating that as much as possible, but also making sure that it's quality. On the intent though, I think one thing that I mentioned earlier that I just want to come back to is intent matters. But you need to also make sure that you're not just doing third-party data that anyone can have access to. You should also be doing first-party data that you exclusively have, and that's how you distinguish yourself. So, like the example I had of calling in low. So let's say again you're selling. Let's say the persona you sell to is the CFO. You're going to get one shot at talking to that CFO. You need to make sure that you have your A game and your A message when you're talking to them. And so that means maybe you talk to the accounting manager first, or the director of finance, or some other person who probably feels the pain on a daily basis. And then you can build a case so that you come back. So that's when I talk about intent, not only being just a broad, freely available or largely available signal, it should be tuned to you and distinct to you.
Yeah. And a great point there where I think first party intent, people often forget that there's actually loads just in the conversations and the notes that you guys have had in the CRM. And that's probably been a theme through this conversation, which I love. It's one of the things that I think people go wrong with. They're too busy looking at all the new shiny tools rather than actually, and it's understandable, CRMs are kind of big and scary to a lot of people. And actually, if we can just make a few tweaks and get all the right data to the right teams, that's where you've probably got some good data or some good information there. You don't need to go wasting time adding a new tool in and distracting people, and you can get teams back on the phone quicker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Final thought from me and final sort of question. What in your mind is the best sort of fit customer for someone, for a power or parallel dialer? And, the flip side of that, maybe who just shouldn't be considering it yet.
Right. I think that the best kind of customer tends to be one that has a large addressable market that they're trying to go after. If you have a very narrow and specific one, like let's say you can only sell to Fortune 100 banks, and it's only one type of person or persona within that company that makes sense, that's less interesting. It's less relevant. But at the same time, I do want to say that the way that we recommend dialing is a very strategic approach. So you can do parallel, of course, and you can get many more conversations. But what we're seeing be really effective is that approach of dialing in to learn from the team. So calling in below the line, strategically learning, using the power of the parallel dialer to figure out or to get to more people, have more conversations, and build that business case, and then go back and be very targeted and focused on the key decision maker that you want to go after. But ultimately, yeah, the best kinds the most likely are when it's when you have a number of people, many people in your buying committee, and also when you have a large addressable market.
Yeah, excellent, nice. Peter, been great to speak to you. Really interesting. I'm sure you've given a lot of people some real clarity on where they should actually start thinking about all the data and stuff that will feed into tools like Nooks, tools that support human to human selling and are actually automating all of the busy work, which people don't want their teams doing. Where's best for people to find out more about what you're doing, what the Nooks team are doing at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So Nooks.ai is our website, but also on LinkedIn, we post a lot of that helpful content and insights, benchmarks, guidance, lots of case studies, and the like that can just help people to be more effective in their careers, whether they're customers or not. So definitely encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Pleasure to have you on and talk in more detail. Everybody, if you can subscribe, and share this with anyone you think it will add value to, and we'll see you on the next one.